Cooper up across the 15, cuts left at the 20, on the room at the 30, headed to the near sideline, one man to beat, makes the move at midfield, coming to the near side at the 30, he's at the 20, he's at the 10, 5, touchdown, Kentucky!
And with that, we're here with another episode of Believe in Kentucky. Got Aaron Gershon from the Cat's Paws, the man who gave us that highlight, Tom Leach on the call, Jalen Whitlow, and we got a guest with us from Cats Illustrated, photographer, managing editor, wears all the hats. Jeff Drummond is in here to talk some Cats with us tonight. Man, fellas, how's everybody doing?
Good, man. Can't complain.
Yeah, keeping the head above water, man. You know how it goes in November. Just got back from Chicago, on the way to South Carolina, but lots of stuff going on.
It's a fun time of year, but it keeps us on the move.
I got to just get to the important stuff right quick with Jeff and Aaron real fast. I just want to know, two-part question. And we talked about this before, Aaron. So, Jeff, your ears might have been burning a few episodes back. Who's going to be the first person to miss an Immaculate Grid category? And when they build an Immaculate Grid Hall of Fame, who gets a wing first? A Jeff Drummond wing or the Aaron Gershon wing? Because y'all are killing the game. So
yeah, since football really got kicking off, I've been slacking and haven't been filling it out as much. I just haven't had the time, but I don't know, man. Jeff and I we'll compare notes too before practice. We were doing that for a little bit, so I don't know who the better one. If we're talking like pre 2000, I'm getting my butt whooped, but I don't know, man. It's close. I'd say we're pretty even.
I forgot to keep up with it as much since the playoffs have ended.
Yeah,
because baseball is not at the front
Top
of
your
mind right now, but I need to do it more often. But I've taken more L's in that one than Aaron has.
Oh, you have? Because every time I see y'all tweeting this 9 for 9, I'm like, man, it's like, Steph Curry and all these guys warm up. I was like, are they ever going to miss a shot? Like, is Jeff and Aaron ever going to get one wrong?
I've had a few 7s and 8s along the way. And
wow.
It ruins the rest of my day, too.
Maybe it's best we keep on the hiatus then.
So, yeah, had to hit that, man. I see y'all tweeting about it the most, and y'all are pretty much money every time. Real quick, Jeff, man, we had Paul Yanish on here before the start of the baseball season. So as we just get your thoughts on the Reds today. Exceed expectations? Was it a fun ride? Were you disappointed? Where were you at? And where are you at on your Reds before we get into everything else?
Man, they've kind of reeled me back in. I was ready to jump off the cliff a couple of years ago. In fact, last season I didn't watch them play a game for the first time in my life. I turned on the cornfield Field of Dreams game for like 10 minutes because it was something cool and unusual. But I didn't care about the Reds. I just wanted to see them playing ball in the cornfield. So I went through all last season, and I thought that was going to be the hardest thing in my life because I've diehard baseball since I was about 5 years old. And it really wasn't that hard. And that kind of scared me because I was like, can I really give up something that I'm so passionate about and not even miss a beat? But I decided to jump back in this year, and I think they have management, front office that's finally doing things the right way, and there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel.
So the disconnect was real last year, huh?
It was. But I had the best blood pressure of my life. I went to the doctor. My cardiologist said, "What are you doing? Are you exercising more? Change your diet?" I said, "No, I quit watching the Reds."
Oh my God!
Cleanest bill of health ever.
I'm probably in the same boat with how bad the Yankees and Giants have been this year. Like, I get to just relax. There's no point in stress, and I couldn't even tell you what time the Giants game is this Sunday. I'm so checked out. Like, it's not a fun place to be in, but sometimes it's good for you to go touch grass, I guess, if you would.
Absolutely. And Jalen, you're not a fan, so you don't even have these problems, man.
Yeah, I don't have these issues, man. I choose not to be. I mean, I grew up in a place where it was kind of middle of nowhere. As a, when it comes to pro sports, I know everybody's Bama or Auburn fans, but when it comes to pro sports, man, I have I don't even watch it, to be honest with you. I would be sitting here lying to you guys and said that I watch pro sports. I don't. Usually I watch if I can catch it, but I'm usually coaching during the World Series. Watch the Super Bowl usually in February. NBA Finals in the summer, but outside of that, man, I'm watching Alabama football, Kentucky football, and whoever else I like to watch on offense.
That'll work. Well, we'll definitely get back to the football. Got to start with the most recent last night. Aaron, you were there in the United Center. The Cats, could have easily rolled over, down 8-0, down 11-3, and got run off the court. And they took a punch and punched back and was taking it to Kansas for a while. Just came up short there in the closing few minutes.
Yeah, look, it's tough. It's you got to be pretty proud of that effort against the number one team in the country, a really experienced team, more size, obviously, not Hunter Dickinson and all the bigs they have on that team, and you only get out rebounded by 3. Obviously, some individual things to really like with Rob Dillingham, the heater he went on toward the end of that first half there to kind of give them that 7-point lead into half. Reed Shepherd, I thought, was great for the most part outside of that last sequence there. I thought Adu Thiero played probably his best game as a Wildcat so far. So a lot to like, but I think I was talking about this with Jeff and the guys over at football before we talked to Brad White and company today. And I think the two things that killed them last night, which I think are both fixable. One is kind of when things started to hit the fan, if you would. They kind of went back and said, Antonio, bail us out, man. Like, we need you. And that's the type of thing where that's too much pressure on them. That's what kind of got them hurt last year against Kansas State, where they even had an 8-point lead in the second half there, and they kind of relied on Antonio's shooting to finish them off. Antonio went cold. They couldn't get any other offense going, and they ended up losing the game. So I think that was kind of similar. And then the other thing is you need more from DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards. And it's only their third college game. They're both 5-star McDonald's All-Americans. Edwards, like the projected number 1 pick in the upcoming draft. So there's plenty of optimism. Those two guys, especially Justin Edwards, can get it going. But you're not going to win many marquee games when those two guys shoot a combined 1 for 18. And I think, honestly, the most concerning stat of them all, and I think Calipari mentioned it was a concerning stat that DJ Wagner had. I forget if it was after one of the 2 regular season games or in the preseason, but DJ Wagner only having 1 assist. You're not going to win many games, big games, when your starting point guard only has 1 assist. So need more from those two guys. I think they will, but those are kind of my main takeaways. But still, like if you're going to have a moral victory, it's going to be probably the effort they put together last night.
So you, Jeff?
This was one of those weird kind of games, and we talked about it earlier today while we were waiting at football practice, that you go back and look at the stats, and it still doesn't make any sense to me. You had Hunter Dickinson goes for 27 and 21. The point guard who has 2 points all season has 23. Good player, but he gets – and then there's a third guy nobody's even talking about that has a triple-double. And the Cats had the lead for most of that game. And I look at those numbers and I'm like, how did this even happen? How did they not lose by, 15, 20 points? And I've been trying to crack the code, and the best I can figure is they take care of the ball really well. They do not waste possessions. They had about close to 20 more shots than Kansas did.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that matters, in games like this. And keeping the rebounding close was big. But in modern basketball, if you can knock down 12 threes, and I know some people thought they may have forced a couple and took too many. But, man, if they're 12 of 36, that's a 50% night, basically, effective field goal percentage. And it changes everything. And it gives you a lot of hope moving forward that they're going to have ways to score, even if the overall field goal percentage doesn't look that great.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch it because we've been busy with football stuff and whatnot. But from what I've seen and highlights and whatnot, and from what I've heard from reputable sources, you always want to obviously win the game. That's the goal. That's the objective of competitive sports. However, with such a young team, putting everything together, how it came together so late, you can't help but to be excited about what's to come. That's a pretty veteran thing with some key pieces from Kansas, or some big pieces. I mean, you got guys down there who are dwarfing, Kentucky, in the court. There's no doubt about that. So for them to battle in the rebound game, for them to battle on the board, for them to battle on defense like they did, and for guys, for your starting point guards to have one assist, if I had to bet that will not happen again. I think they're in a good spot. I mean, Kansas is a good team. We're probably going to see Kansas make a deep run again. Again, you always want to win, but at the end of the day, did you improve? Did you see what you have for the year? Did you kind of set your sights on what and who's who and what's what to be able to, get yourself into SEC play and be able to dominate SEC play? That's always the goal. But at the end of the day, we all know exactly what they're working with when it comes to the youth and the freshness of this group being together. So, that's just what it is, man. And I'm sure Calipari feels the exact same way. Yes, you want to win, but at the end of the day, he found out a lot about his team moving forward. So now he can do a better job of connecting the pieces and connecting the dots, I should say, and getting those guys ready for what's down the road. Because I think they got a chance to. And we talked about this, do something really special this year. I think they have that type of team. It's just a good vibe around the team. You guys can feel it. So I'm excited to see what's coming.
Sure, and I'm with y'all. As far as Edwards and Wagner, but then it's kind of a catch-22. I think that kind of forced Reeves to try. Somebody's got to try to be aggressive and do something. So he wasn't hitting a lot, but those guys were first big game and they're trying to find their way, the big stage, the whole thing, and they'll acclimate and settle in, and you'll get what we hope to be that balance across the board where they're tough to defend. If you shut down a couple of them, well, there's still three more guys that can kill you, and then you got Reed and Devin Ham off the bench. So I think Edwards and all those guys will find their way, but that kind of forced Antonio to be like, well, I got to try to go. Yeah. And win this. Somebody got to try to go and be aggressive. And I credit him for doing that. Hate that he wasn't able to get a few more to fall.
25 shots. I mean, that's just I think John Clay put it out that his 17 3-points attempted were the most in a single game in the Calipari era.
Gotta be.
Yeah, it's just a crazy number, and he only hit 3 of them. So, tough night. I'm sure Antonio too, man. Not only the pressure of probably being the guy that needs to step up, but homecoming game for him, first time in a Kentucky uniform playing back in Chicago, so probably had a lot of nerves there for him too. But again, this is a game that it stinks to lose. Anytime you're up 14 in the second half, you don't want to lose. And I was like, how did Adu Thiero have such a terrible plus minus? And Jeff was like, yeah, because he was on the court for an 11-1 run at the end of the game, and then a 9-0 run at the beginning, 11-3. So that made sense. So just a tough one, game of runs, and they fell up on the wrong side. But if they get a little more from those two stars, Wagner and Edwards, take the pressure off Antonio a little bit, I think they'll be in a good shape going into their next big one, which is going to be 2 weeks here at Rupp Arena against Miami.
I know a lot of people this morning were kind of down on Antonio Reeves a little bit because of those shooting numbers. But when I was watching the game, and I really wasn't watching the stat sheet as much as sometimes I usually do, it didn't occur to me that he was having those kind of issues.
Yeah, I didn't realize until after either.
I thought he was coming up with some big buckets when they needed them. And I like the way he would go and get a 2 at times and attack the lane and get in there. And even the missed threes, they all look like they're going to drop for me. There's some guys that shoot for Kentucky, and I'm like, oh boy, that's not going in. But when Antonio does, I'm like, that looks like a pretty good shot. So the 3 for 17 doesn't bother me a whole lot. It doesn't look great.
No.
But at the end of the day, he had 24 points. I think he had 8 boards, which was big. And he played decent defense and did some other things. So I'm not going to dwell on the shooting. I think he did his job for the most part in that one, and could have been the hero if a couple other guys had stepped up.
It didn't feel like you said, you didn't catch yourself watching the game and say, man, Antonio's out here gunning. Say ball hogging. You didn't get that vibe at all. So
maybe that's because of the pace, the way they were getting up and down, and it's fun to watch. But maybe there will be some nights if they continue to play at this tempo where, a guy ends up with some shooting stats that look a little bit off.
Yeah. A lot of volume, for sure.
At the end of the day, it was good to just see the number 84 next to Kentucky's name. I felt like there haven't been that many 80-point outings the last, really since the injury started to pile up on that 21-22 team. I mean, last year, I'd have to go back and look. Off the top of my head, the only 80-point output I can remember in like a real, like not counting the cupcake games at the beginning of the year, would be Auburn. The game at home against Auburn. I can't even remember another game they were 80 or more. So even that's just a nice number to put next to the Kentucky logo again. It's been a little bit.
Get this too. They had a 6-minute stretch in the second half where they didn't hit a field goal, and then they ended the game about the last 4 minutes they didn't make one. So that's 84 points, 10 minutes of the game. They didn't do a thing.
Yeah. And they scored what? I know they went into the first media timeout down 11-3, and they were up 47. They scored 47 points in the first half after they scored 3 points in 4 minutes there. So, yeah, I mean, they could score in bunches. That run that Rob Dillingham had 4 threes on 4 straight possessions and then dishes to Antonio for a 5th. Like, that was I thought they were going to win in that moment. I'm like, how do you lose this game? That's like a special moment that people are just going to be like the Tyrese Maxey game a couple of years ago. It's going to be one of those Champions Classic memories these fans, look back upon. So, hopefully that moment doesn't get too much forgotten because it was a loss. Because, I mean, that was kind of like okay, this is how Kentucky basketball is supposed to be type of moment for me, at least that 1 to 2 minute swing in the game.
It was a spark to get them back in it. Like you said, they could have folded. Jeff, I'm going to date us because we're older than Aaron and Jalen, but Dillingham's kind of got that Mad Maxwell, where you're unconscious all the time. You can miss 100 straight shots. It doesn't matter. That's going to stop you from the next 10 or 20 you're going to take. That mindset where he's just unfazed by whatever's happening.
I much prefer that to the alternative. I like, man, those guys, it's like the old quote that Jordan had about you can't be thinking about, missing shots like that. You always got to think that the next one's going down.
Mm-hmm.
I liked what I saw from both Dillingham and Reeves in that.
And for him to be, Calipari says that everybody that's watched him, what you're getting, he can be breathtaking. There can be some bad shots, and you got to kind of find that balance and rein it in. When he was on fire and he could have just walked into a 3, and he still hits Reeves cross court for the 3 one of them that Antonio made. For him to still have the vision and say, hey, let me get the ball to a teammate, true freshman. And I wouldn't have had a problem as hot as he was if he, take that shot. Again, Jeff, Nick Van Exel used to pull up 1-on-5 and just, launch those 30-footers. I would have had a problem hot as Dilly was to do that, but he looks and sees a teammate and gets the ball even in that moment. So they only grow from that, They only grow.
Yeah. No, when I saw that play develop, I mean, Rob, all he had to do was dribble to the 3-point line. It would have been wide open. So for him to have that vision, have that unselfishness, man, that was pretty big. And they talked about that whole Toronto trip, at least the first 2 games that I was there for. I probably heard the word unselfish 9 or 10 times from not Cal, but the players. So to see it kind of come to fruition in their first big game, again, all this, they didn't get the win. There's still work to do, but I mean, it's as positive as you could be after a loss. It really is.
Nice foundation to build on going forward for sure. For sure. So you guys were at practice today, and Jalen, I know you listen to all the interviews, and we hear everything the coaches say. So what's the vibe? What's the mindset? Got a revenge game against South Carolina. They're trying to get bowl eligible. What's the mindset for what you guys heard from the coaches today?
Go ahead, Jeff. I'll let you start.
Well, our running joke at practice is how we're running out of questions to ask at these things. We've reached that point in the season, and it kind of mirrors like with about 3 weeks to go towards the end of camp, heading into the season.
Mm-hmm.
We've already hammered everything to that point, and everybody's like, "Let's just go play a game." And it's kind of feeling like that every week now. It's like, okay, we beat this stuff to death. Brad White must have said, we got to win one-on-ones like 8 times a day. So any question we asked, that's kind of what it boiled down to. And, he might be right. When you watch
he is right.
some of the film. I mean, I know people are out there all the time trying to nitpick schemes and play calls and all that, but ultimately, you got to beat that guy across from you if you want to win some of these games.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, by the way, I was just going into my transcript from today. I have him saying one-on-ones 4 times. So there you go.
It felt like twice as much.
It felt like twice as much, but I only got him at 4. But no, I just think, that and the third down defense were kind of the 2 things from today that came up. But it wasn't really anything new. I think more so as not to ignore what happened today. There really wasn't that much, though. I took more from Mark Stoops, honestly, on Monday. I actually thought that was one of his better press conferences of the year. I thought he was pretty open about some of the issues that were kind of ongoing, kind of just breaking down some of the things on defense, some of the things on the offensive line. I thought he was pretty honest. I thought he was accountable. And I thought it was a good press conference. I thought he gave a lot of good information. So that was more so. And honestly, my biggest takeaway from it is he was pretty damn upbeat. I mean, I don't know about you, Jeff, but listening to him last Monday before the Alabama game and even Thursday in his little 5-minute breakout session he does at the end of the week, he seemed like he kind of knew what was about to happen, in my opinion. When you could kind of sense the stress in his voice. You can kind of the hesitancy, like, you're not going to come out there and say, yeah, we got no chance. He's going to talk about, them having a good week of practice and being prepared and, knowing exactly what Alabama's going to bring. But you could hear it in his voice. And I've kind of felt the same way that whole Georgia week and even a little bit, the Tennessee week. So I thought he was really upbeat. I thought he had a really good message about I'm trying to think. I haven't heard him like when they asked him, when he was asked, there's still a lot to play for this season. Usually he'll kind of brush that off and be like, yeah, next game. And he's talking some big picture stuff. He's like, yeah, like it's going to help our bowl positioning if we get these wins. Finishing in the top half of the SEC is nothing to scoff at. And he's right. So there was just a lot more, I thought, from Stoops. I thought he was pretty open. You could kind of tell there's at least from him, there's a sense of urgency these last 2 games to finish 8-4, which would be the 3rd best record he's had in a regular season. So, yeah, again, my takeaways this week are probably from that press conference.
So you, Jay?
Yeah, man. Like I said, I watch him, and it's always kind of, you try your best as a coach. Those games that you're going into, and you know that you probably don't have much of a shot, and you try not to, kind of spew that onto your team and into the media and whatnot, but it comes out, and everybody knows, Alabama's on a different level, Georgia's on a different level. However, they do have a chance to go into Columbia, South Carolina at 7:30, which I think is probably the most underrated Saturday night experience in the SEC, and I'll stand by that one. It is underrated. That place, man, Williams-Brice, it gets pretty loud and pretty rowdy. I got a few kids that I've coached that go there now, and it's just nuts, man. And I think, it'll be a big game for South Carolina because, like I said, they're trying to get in the bowl game, and Kentucky's trying to get into a better bowl game. So, it's going to be a big game. There's always that little rivalry between Kentucky and South Carolina, and it's been that way for a while. And I do think, it's an interesting matchup because South Carolina's not playing bad right now. They actually are playing as good as they played all year. You got a good quarterback in Spencer Rattler, who can make all the plays. He's an NFL talent. But I think, we have to see the offense kind of get back on track this week and score some points. I think this game is going to be a game of point score. I don't think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think Kentucky's offense is going to have to generate some points, which I think they can. And Liam Cohn was really annoyed talking about how South Carolina has changed the structure on defense and they're going more to a Mississippi State style, which is I can only imagine how annoying that is because you study in the offseason, you put together. Everybody has binders of each team that they put together in the offseason. And you watch film in the offseason of that D coordinator, that school, and you put together notes. You start to even make a game plan a little bit, and you get to the game, the week of the game, and now they're changing. So that's probably a little bit annoying.
Especially when that tape was really bad, Jalen.
No doubt. Especially when they're changing to what they're changing to. But at the end of the day, like y'all were saying, man, you got to win. You got to win one-on-one matchups. You got to beat the guy across from you consistently. And that's what football is. So Kentucky, in my opinion, has the better team. The kicker is they're going there at 7:30 at night. That's always the kicker going to that place. It's tough to win in that place at 7:30 at night. We saw that last year with Tennessee going in there. It's just tough to win there. We saw that in 2021 when they pulled out the win, but they didn't play well on offense in particular. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. I think Kentucky will pull it out, but I do think they're going to have to score points. I think South Carolina's offense is kind of hitting a little bit of stride right now. Spencer Rattler's playing well. So they're going to have to score some points and kind of put some pressure on Rattler, man, and make them one dimensional if they can.
So, they're changing up everything here at the last minute, at the 11th hour, defensively, so to speak. How will that go over for them defensively? Will this be better for them? Are they gonna accept it? Will it click for them? When Tony Delk hosted this show with me, this was when Tom Crean was still at Georgia, and Tom Crean every 5 games would just change the entire offense and overhaul it. And sure, that's hard to scout, that's hard to prepare for. But I asked TD, I said, is he kind of maybe overwhelming his own guys? How are they digesting all this? Will South Carolina's guys digest this defensively? Been doing this for 10 games, and now we're going to change up now in game 11, or will it be more suited to their personnel? I mean, it could go either way, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you can't discredit that it, I know it's Vanderbilt, but you can't discredit that it worked last week. And so not that it's going to work again, but more so it's going to give those guys confidence that they went out and did that and they only gave up 6 points. So you can't discredit that. And you also can't discredit that there's going to be just a confidence going into that game from them that they can beat Kentucky. They did it last year. I understand the circumstances were not ideal for Kentucky, playing with a backup quarterback, making his first career start. First play of the game, you have a reverse that's fumbled, and it gives the ball to Carolina at the 2-yard line. They punched it immediately. So it was just a game from hell for Kentucky. But so I don't think you can discredit that. But at the end of the day, I think it does come down to the 11 guys on the field. And South Carolina's defense, maybe it's a better structure that they played with last week. They put it on tape. Now it's there for Kentucky to watch, and the players just have not played well on defense for South Carolina this season. I mean, obviously their pass defense is the worst in the SEC. It's one of the 11th worst. It's the 11th worst in the country. Their run defense is middle of the pack in the country. They don't get to the quarterback. I think they have this. Kentucky has one more sack than them. So toward the bottom of the SEC in that category. They forced some turnovers, 8 interceptions this year. But if you look at the stats, a lot of those are against the Jacksonville State, I think, were 3 of them. Furnham had a pick or 2. So, that number's even inflated. Like, they've really beat up on there's been some stat padding against those bad teams. So this is not a great South Carolina team. Like Jalen said, Spencer Rattler is a really good quarterback. Xavier Leggette's probably the best wide receiver Kentucky's faced this year. So there's more so concern, I think, that this defense that has really struggled to slow down the pass could be in for another tough night. But this offense, man, if it can just play like it did against Tennessee and add some run to that, and then even I thought they played okay in Mississippi State. I don't think it was a great performance, but before Devin went down, I actually thought they weren't like they were against Tennessee, but they were pretty close, and they even ran the ball a little better than they did the week before. So if they can play like that, crack 30 points, I don't think they've done that since the Florida game. I think they'll end up being fine, but there's some confidence probably brewing in that South Carolina locker room right now.
I'd like to be a fly in the wall over there, because I wonder, when I heard about them changing the schematic approach this late in the season, that's just something you don't hear of.
I'm wondering if it's a different play caller.
That's kind of like Vinny too. It's like, doesn't that put a lot on your guys more than fooling the other team? I can't imagine what it would be like to switch in November to something else. But Aaron was reading off all those stats, and I look at this game where you got to have Kentucky in the 30 to 34 point range.
Yeah.
And if they don't, that's a pretty big letdown given what South Carolina's put on tape. Now, South Carolina might get 27, 28, something like that. But I think if you can get the 30 or 31, you might be in a position to win a closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like we were talking about the defensive change and whatnot, you see coaches do that only when they're in like absolute desperation. And reading off the stats and where they rank right now, I mean, they are in absolute desperation. So I get it. I get it to try to mix it up, and especially, mix it up against, a quote unquote rival, and against a team that has shown to not do as well against that particular structure. Maybe it's a good time to mix it up, and it depends, it's easy to say from the outside looking in that it's really tough to do. However, good coaches find ways to make things relatable and find ways to keep it simple while it, seeming complex to the outside. So who knows? Maybe they have some type of, maybe they installed and camped some type of contingency plan. If things don't go well in their base defense, they'll do this instead. However, I think, they have to keep it pretty simple for their players playing a totally different structure, which I'm sure they are. And, and just that little tweak in structure can throw off opposing teams, even if they're doing, 2 or 3 things out of it. So, if I had to bet, that's what I'm willing to bet that they are doing. I'm sure they're not throwing a full playbook on them and saying, hey, let's play this new defensive structure, and we got 7 different coverages and, 35 different blitzes. I'm sure they're not doing that. So, we'll see. Again, their defense is terrible. Let's call it what it is. It's terrible. So Kentucky got to go out and make sure that everybody else know that it's terrible. Because at the end of the day, you're expected to play teams that you're better than. You're expected to prove to them and to everybody else that you're better than them. So they got to go out and score points. And like Aaron said, they have to be more balanced on offense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think this is a game where you should score 31, 34, 37 points against teams like this, in my opinion. But we'll see. They got to kind of click on all cylinders and make sure they don't allow that crowd to derail them on offense a little bit.
Yeah, I think real quick, just to put a stat in perspective, the only team to not score at least 21 points against South Carolina this year is Vandy. Furman scored 21. Jacksonville State scored 28. Like there's no excuses here. Go on. Sorry.
Well, Jalen said something that made me wonder when talking about the scheme issue. I'm wondering if, and I wish we had thought to follow up with Liam about this, if maybe they just found something in their like nickel or dime packages that was giving them a better chance. And this isn't so much a switch to like that 3-3-5 or
right.
Totally what Mississippi State's doing, as much as maybe it's just them laying into their other packages more and saying our base is not working. What we've used for the first 9 or 10 games of the season just wasn't cutting it. So maybe we'll throw this different package out there and ride with it for a while.
This might be a stupid question, Jalen, but nerd out if you want to. Like Jalen like fights and tries not to nerd out. We want him to, but he's like, no, he like tries to hold back and in the knowledge that he drops. But you said a contingency plan. Maybe they start the season saying if this doesn't work, we'll have this. And you said good coaches can make stuff relatable. That said, how many staffs go in with contingency plans thinking that plan A might not work, we better have plan B? How many go with plan A and are confident that it will work? And how many do say, well, just in case this don't work with these dudes, we got this in the back burner? Yeah. Does that happen a lot? Like,
usually in college and NFL, it don't happen a lot because you get a chance to pick your players. So you get to pick, if you're a 4-3 type structure or 4-2-5 structure with personnel, that's what you go into the season doing. Now some people say, hey, if we have such and such injury at X position, or we have X injury at X or Y injury at Y position, let's do this instead because we have smaller bodies here and bigger bodies here, or more bodies here and less bodies here. So this could have been a thing to where they went into the season saying, hey, this is a third down package that we can throw out if we like. In the spring and summer, we'll work on it, or in the spring, summer, and fall, we'll work on it a little bit. We'll spend a little bit of time on it, and if we need it in the season, we'll use it. Or it could have been a thing to where they say, hey, if we get this happen, if X happens, we need to go here. Because, I think that's coaching is problem solving at the end of the day. So, a lot of times coaches' summers are spent watching film and to figure out how to solve the potential problems that can arise on their team. Now, in high school, you see that type of stuff a lot because you don't get a chance to pick your players. So you get one injury at the end, and now you are a 3-man front team as opposed to being a 4-man front team. So any lower levels of football, when I say lower levels, I'm talking high school and lower, you have to be more flexible. And that's why, as coaches, we always talk, and even some college coaches talk and say, hey, there are a lot of great coaches out there. There are a lot of great coaches in the NFL and college. However, sometimes coaches that come from lower levels are able to adapt. Their adapt muscle is a lot stronger than coaches who aren't at those levels. Because if I coach for Alabama, I don't have to change my structure. I got 30 of these guys that I recruited to do this. So they're going to do that. And that's just what it is. In high school, you may have 2 guys that can play this position. And if something happens to those 2 guys, then you got to have you got to be able to adapt and change. And you may have to adapt during a game, not even in the off season, not even during the week. You may have to adapt during a game. So yes, the good coaches, they always have contingency plans. Sometimes it's super layered. Sometimes it's 3 and 4 layers to that thing, right? You go watch Malzahn is one that come to mind. Ryan Day is somebody that comes to mind to where they always seem like they're a step ahead no matter what. If this happens, they have rep this enough to be able to do this. Or if that happens, they have enough guys and enough reps to be able to implement this in a game, right? So I had to learn that the hard way as a young coach, a few years ago. And now it's one of those things that is the reason why guys like Nick Saban, he said it the other day in his interview, how he still loves this thing. Like, because there's so many different challenges and variables. And that's why they call you coach, because you have to be able to adapt and put your players in the best, situation so they can go out there and play fast and try to have a chance to succeed at what they're doing. So, yes, to answer your question, they have coaches out there that are really, really, really good at having plans for, if something happens that's, not considered ideal, where they can go and still have enough, bullets in the chamber, so to speak, to go out and compete and win a game. So, and maybe South Carolina's a guy, and Beamer kind of strikes me as a guy that would want his staff to do that type of thing, especially the way he coaches on special teams. He is a, his dad as well.
Sorry.
Yeah. But they are extremely, extremely, adaptable when it comes to special teams. Anytime you get a team like that, and I'm really nerding out, but anytime you get a team like that who go on special teams and week after week after week, they're able to beat you with some type of trick, some type of gimmick on special teams, that's a good coach. That's a guy who can adapt. That's a guy who can make things simpler for his players, because teams are studying you. This is their job, to study you all day, every day. And for you to still be able to get them on tricks on punt is really, really impressive. So, you always got those coaches out there like that, man, who are really, really good at what they do when it comes to that.
Makes sense. Oh, to me, he was ahead of schedule in year one, getting them to the Duke's Mayo Bowl. They won a lot of close games that could have went either way. Like, they had barely beat Vanderbilt that year, like a 2 or 3 point game, I think. And injuries and stuff this year, but is it maybe kind of the law of averages kind of catching back up with him to where maybe they thought, hey, we won 7, 8 games in year one, we're ready to, and now it's not really what they thought just yet. Is that kind of how y'all see what's going on with Beamer over there?
It seems to me like outside of the very elite in the conference from year to year, and then maybe go to the flip side of that and the worst 2 teams, that everybody else in that middle 10 or however many it would be is kind of just fighting for the same chunk, and it's hard from week to week, and it changes from week to week. And I think South Carolina kind of figured that out coming into this year, when after coming off last season when a lot of good things broke their way, that it's a whole new year, and sometimes those breaks are going to go the opposite way this time around. Kentucky's found that out too in some of its games.
Yeah, I think South Carolina, I kind of started to have a bad feeling about, actually, when I was in Nashville, not Atlanta this year, Nashville for SEC Media Days, when Shane Beamer brought up that he thought 38 freshmen would be on the 2 deep depth chart. And I was like, 38? And I didn't know if he was exaggerating, but you look at that depth chart, it's not 38. I don't even know if he – but there's a lot of youth on that roster, and then they've gotten decimated on the offensive line. And if you kind of look, I was talking to one of my buddies who works for the rival site, actually, on the South Carolina side, Alan, over at SEC Media Days, or I think I was talking to him then. Anyway, apparently they did not have a great transfer portal cycle. I mean, I know they lost they gained Mario Anderson at running back, but they lost their starter from last year, Marshawn Lloyd, who had a great game against Kentucky, had a great season. He's now over, at USC. Gilbert Edmond, an edge rusher that they were really high on, went to Florida State. They lost the tight end, Jaheim Bell, who's been a monster at Florida State. So, and they didn't really add much depth on that offensive line, where they lost a lot of talent from last year, and they lost some guys in the defensive backfield, including Darius Rush and Cam Smith, guys who were drafted. So I don't think they did a great job in the portal, and they have a lot of young talent. Their recruiting has gone very well. Beamer's recruiting at a high level. I think they have a top 20 class coming in. If it stands right now in 2024, they finished number 18 in 2023. So there's some young talent, but it's a really young roster. And I think that's a big reason they're 4-6. And, if you're Kentucky, there's obviously some youth on the Wildcats as well, especially in the defensive backfield. It's getting thin. I mean, Brad White I think, Jeff, you were the one that asked him today. He wouldn't commit to Andrew Phillips playing this weekend. It sounds like Max Harrison's going to play. I know he was supposed to talk to us today and something came up, but I think he's fine. But, Ty Bryant's obviously a true freshman starting in the defensive backfield, but South Carolina, man, they've got a lot of youth. But their quarterback's experienced, their star receivers experienced, and those are the two positions that are giving Kentucky a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, I think kind of what Jeff said, in the SEC, man, to be honest with you got, Alabama, LSU, or Alabama, Georgia, sometimes LSU. Then you got the Vanderbilts of the world, right now, like the Arkansas or whatnot. Everybody else, you can just roll the dice and say who's going to have everybody else is on the same, even Arkansas most years, they're on the same plane. Vanderbilt's the mainstay where they are. Alabama, Georgia's the mainstay where they are. Everybody else is just, look at Missouri this year. Missouri, not only Missouri playing good football, Missouri, you could almost say they could have beat Georgia at Georgia.
And they should have beat LSU.
Yeah, should have beat LSU. Was up against LSU pretty much the whole game from what I remember. It should have beat Georgia at Georgia, or could have. And it's just like, man, they are the team that happened to get picked this year by the football guys to have a good year. I'm not saying that their roster isn't better than Kentucky's, in my opinion, but they are coaching really well over there. And, they just happen that things are kind of bouncing their way. They've been relatively healthy, good quarterback, good receiver, defense is playing pretty well. It just happened. Kentucky had a year like that a few years ago where they had the year where they stayed pretty healthy, good defense, NFL, caliber guys on the edge, so it's just one of those years, man, to where it's Missouri's turn this year. Next year, Missouri may be a, 5-17, because that's very doable at Missouri. Kentucky could be whatever. So, the Kentuckys, the Missouris, the Auburns, the sometimes the Mississippi States, I'm not sure right now, Texas A&M, Arkansas, South Carolina. Some of these teams, man, you just roll the dice, and if they stay healthy, they got a shot. If they don't, things can quickly turn for the worse, because as we know, this conference is a beast. It eats its own. There's just, people like to say, hey, the SEC is kind of down this year. I was watching Joel Klatt today, and he was saying, the SEC shouldn't get as much credit this year. They shouldn't get as much respect. I'm like, man,
because they're all beating up on each other.
Yeah, like Kirby Smart said, please come play the schedule, man. Because Florida may not be Alabama or Georgia, but at the end of the day, these teams still have dogs, and you still got to play these teams week after week after week after week after week. There's not a lot of Arizona States. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of teams like that over here. The Pac-12 is good this year. Big 12 is always solid. Big 10 is always solid. There's not a lot of teams that you can just roll out and say, hey, we feel really good about this one. You got to bring it every week. Look at Kentucky and Vanderbilt last year. You better bring it every week, man, because it's tough. So, Stoops know that. Everybody knows that. Like I said, unless you're Bama, Georgia, or Vanderbilt, they're all mainstays of where they are. But everybody else, you eat off the floor.
Y'all mentioned A&M and Mississippi State. You got Jimbo and Zach that didn't even make it through the season. So crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and there might be another one coming up in Arkansas. Unfortunately, it's tough. I feel Jimbo, it was just a matter of when, right? The Texas A&M can afford it, and that's a great opening. If they get the right, I feel like we've been saying it forever, but if they get the right coach in there, they're going to unlock a beast. But as far as State goes, you feel for Zach Arnett. That was an impossible situation, with Michael Leach dying and so suddenly, and they kind of made that move so they would keep that recruiting class they had coming in, and now it wasn't working out, and he had a really low buyout with an AD who was not the one who hired him, and that's a tough one to survive. So hopefully they'll get the right coach in there, and Arnett he'll be a wanted man as a defensive coordinator. That 3-3. Liam Cohn I asked him I think you were there, Jeff, before that game. If he had like played anyone else who played that style of defense, and he couldn't think of anyone. Like, it's such a unique style that, when they have the right players, has worked every single year. And even this year, their defense, it hasn't been good pass defense wise, but their run defense is in the top half of the country. So they're still doing some things right, and they have some really good linebackers. So
I've always wondered why there aren't more copycats.
You would think,
because the hardest position to recruit in college football is the defensive line.
Yes.
Defensive line and corner are both pretty close. But, you got a lot of skilled guys out there who can play on the back end of that.
A lot of speed, yeah.
But it's hard to find, 4 or 5 Deion Walkers as an example.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why don't more people use that, 3-3-5?
That's what we asked a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, if it's that disruptive and messes up your philosophy that much, it breaks all the rules offensively you're supposed to look at. Like, why don't everybody else do it? And Jalen, you're like, it's hard to teach. Yeah, you went into a big thing as to why we don't see it as often.
It's a beast to teach. It's a beast. You gotta, if you weren't, and it's kind of like the Browse system. All right, I know a lot of people who've played in that system. I know people who are playing in that system right now, and they are so secretive about it, and there's so much nuance, And I'm led to believe that system is kind of the same way. It's a beast to teach. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's kind of feast or famine almost. If you don't know what you're doing. I was listening to Steve Sarkisian talk about it. He was talking about Matt Campbell over there at Iowa State and was saying how, when they implemented it in the Big 12, they had to go through 2 years of growing pains because it's a great defense once you get the ball rolling, but it's not like the 4-2 or 4-3 or just basic 3-4. There's a lot of moving parts, and your guys have to be really flexible. You got to develop and recruit hybrid guys in a lot of places. Because your middle safety in that 3-3-5 or whatever you want to call it, your middle safety a lot of times turn into a Mike linebacker. Your safeties turn into Will and Sam linebackers a lot. Your Mike linebacker turns into a D lineman or a rush guy a lot. So you got to recruit guys that are really, really flexible, really, really versatile in what position that they can play. No one's coming from the NFL. They don't play that in the NFL.
No.
They pay the Bud Duprees, the J.J. Watt, or the T.J. Watts of the world to do one thing: line up outside leverage this damn defensive end and go sack the quarterback every time. That's what they pay them to do. In college, you really don't have that. You can, you some of these schools, they don't get the best recruits, so you got to make do with what you got. And sometimes a lot of those coaches who coach those type of teams end up being really, really good coaches because you got to adapt. So somebody out there created a system to where I may not have the best rushers. I may not have the best box guys, but I'm going to line up in this 3-3-5, and it's going to look like a 5-man box at the snap. But as soon as the ball is snapped, there's now 7 men in the box. There's now 8 men in the box. And now my center, my quarterback is absolute hell trying to identify who's who in the zoo. It is, man. It is. It's because you don't know. Like they were saying, your Mike can line up at Sam.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to block. The receiver's told not to block it, and then you do have to block it.
Yeah. I mean, go watch. I challenge people listen to this. Go watch Iowa State, and please draw up every single front that they line up in. Go watch TCU and draw it all up, and let me know when you're done drawing it up because it's a lot, man. So that's why everybody don't do it because everybody can't do it at the end of the day.
It sounds like the team that should be trying to do it, though, is moving into the Big Ten is USC, man. Like that sounds like the perfect thing to have. There's so many good Big Ten defenses. You have to play defense in that conference to win. That should be Lincoln Riley's first call. He finally, made that decision to fire Grinch. That's my first call. And if not, how about poor Matt House, who we had here in Kentucky, obviously, but how about Baton Rouge?
I'm willing to bet he already called Arnett.
Yeah, which one? Both of them or Kelly?
USC.
Oh, Riley, yeah.
I'm willing to bet he's already made that phone call.
Should.
I'm willing to bet that, man, because I mean that would be a perfect thing to bring into the Big Ten. You know, because I think it'll, you know, I'm trying to think. Does anybody in the Big Ten really run it? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, usually the Big Ten is known for, you know, lining up and putting 4 guys hand in the dirt and stopping the run and that type of thing. So we'll see, man. But yeah, you're right. You know, USC should definitely invest in some burner phones and make some phone calls to some guys.
But yeah, we asked this question a few weeks ago, Jeff, because you know if it's that disruptive, why doesn't everybody do it? You're a Steelers fan. You see Baltimore with no down linemen sometimes on the play. I'm like, well, why doesn't everybody do it? If it confuses everybody, you know, but they just use it here and there. Same thing. We had this conversation just a few weeks ago. Flipping back to basketball recruiting real quick, you got Santo, you got Travis Perry, and Boogie Flang coming in. So everybody that was wanting to panic about next year's class, maybe that'll kind of calm everybody down a little bit, wouldn't y'all say?
Yeah, especially after adding another with Jaden. I need some help on that last name. I haven't talked to him.
I'm not there yet.
So I'm assuming it's Quaintance.
I think so. Yeah.
But that was a game changer in the overall, because people before that were starting to wonder, is Kentucky struggling a little bit in this class? But now it's really
number 2, I think, in both of our systems there.
And it might just lead to somebody like Richmond jumping on board pretty soon. And before you know it, you've got another, you know, typical Calipari number 1 or number 2 ranked recruiting class that has all the parts. And I really like the fact that they took a chance on Perry.
Yeah.
You know, it may or may not work out, you know, at this level, but there's no substitute for the skill of shooting the ball. And they give him a shot, and playing the way they are right now in this style, I think there's a spot for him at Kentucky where he can really help. And then you got, you know, with JQ, he's got 2 years to play.
That's right.
There's not going to be any one and done talk with him. You've got your big man kind of. I've seen some people say center, but his skills are a little bit more versatile than that. He's kind of like a hybrid big man in my view. But you've got that locked up for a couple of years with one of the best prospects in the country.
Absolutely. And with Perry, look, again, you and I are older than these guys, Jeff, but setting the state record in scoring, you and I have heard King Kelly Coleman our whole life. That name has transcended generations. You know, we heard about it as little kids. His name is still very relevant. So just talk about how he was as a player, the record that Travis broke, because, you know, like that kind of carries a lot of weight when you think of what he did.
I didn't think we were ever going to see that. And, you know, I covered one of the state's great scorers down in Harlan many years ago when they had Charles Thomas there.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, this guy put up 25, 30 points every night, and he wasn't anywhere near that record. Mm-hmm. I thought, this is the best guy that I've covered personally. So to eclipse that and to break the all-time record, which it's hard to imagine how a guy like King Kelly Coleman scored all those points with no 3-point line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just insane. But this guy, Travis Perry, he's the best shooter I've seen come out of the state since Lofton at Mason County. And we know what kind of career he ended up having at Tennessee. It's a shame he didn't play for Kentucky, but, you know, Tubby had that great class put together and had all those guards locked up. But I haven't seen anybody shoot it close to what Perry does since Lofton's time.
Wow. Yeah, that's high praise right there, man. It really is. Sure is. So
and you talk about also just wanting to get like that Rupp Arena crowd back. Like I tried asking John Calipari, he gave a John Calipari non-answer. But you know, every time I don't know if you noticed this, Jeff. Every time Reed Shepherd touches the basketball, that there's like a buzz and like a hold your breath in that arena. He is beloved, and you know, Travis Perry obviously is not a legacy guy, but being from Kentucky, small town, you know, Eddyville. Every time he touches the ball, it's going to be pretty similar, where everyone's kind of on pins and needles and really excited when he makes a play. And again, I'm not sure, how great of a college player he's going to be, if it's going to work out here, but you can never have enough shooting depth. And these kids are loved here, man. I mean, you heard it didn't work out for Dante Allen, but anytime he had a big game, the fans that was as pumped up as they were, at any point in those seasons, respectively, when he was here. So
Dominique Hawkins,
absolutely. Darius Miller,
8th or 9th guy down the bench, and the fans absolutely went crazy.
Yeah,
anytime Dominique was out there. So yeah, they give you 13 scholarships. I've been on Cal about this for years. It's like, use those scholarships, man. I know he's trying to do right.
We'll cut that out.
The crowd responds. So, I know he's always said he's trying to do right by the kids, and he wants them to have a genuine opportunity to get their playing time, but at least find out if you can make it work here.
Yeah.
They can transfer if it doesn't, and everybody turns out fine.
I was surprised that he picked Kentucky. I thought, I think a lot of people were. They go to Ole Miss or go to Cincinnati or go somewhere else, and then if he blew up there, then maybe he comes back. But he's going to come on in as a freshman and see where you fit in next year. So looking forward to it. Y'all got anything else y'all want to hit before we bow on it?
I think we hit a lot of good stuff there, and another big weekend coming up for this football program, and basketball will get a big win, I'm sure, on Friday, and keep building confidence over there.
You got to get to 7-4, get revenge on South Carolina, finish up at 8-4. That'll look, Jeff. We know 8-4 doesn't happen a lot. Sure, it's not 9-3 and 10-2 like a lot of people want, but 8-4 is solid. You wish you'd had a better showing against Alabama. If you lost, or Georgia don't just have the game over in the first quarter, but it is what it is. If you finish up 8-4, that's still like I said,
we never want to get to the point where we're taking that for granted.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's a good thing too, though, because you hear it in the players and the coaches that we can go 8-4. You kind of get that. That's a good place to be, man.
Sure.
We went 8-4 at my time in Kentucky. They would shut the town down. For real.
You're right.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm extremely. This is the most I've been excited for a Kentucky Louisville game in a few years. I'm excited for that because I think this is going to be a big game, and I think Kentucky's going to knock them off. By the way. And kind of ruin their chances to, maybe get in the playoffs, whatever they're thinking, which is not going to happen anyway. But because I think they'll probably lose to Florida State in the ACC championship game. But I think you want to play better against Bama, but Bama is not the 8th best team in the country. Bama is a top 5 team.
Easy.
So you play the team that's probably going to make the playoff if they can beat Georgia. You want to play better, no doubt. But as Stoops and as Cohen said, they just kind of shook their head like, man, look, they are playing on a whole nother level right now. And I don't think you guys realize that. So, it's work to be done, but I think they get these 2 wins and it'll look really good.
Absolutely. Fellas, got another episode in here. Appreciate it. Jeff Drummond, man. Appreciate you taking the time to hop on here.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Vinny. It's good to be in here with you guys. Good to see Jalen again. And always good to see Aaron, even though I see him every day.
Every day. And I'll see you tomorrow for the exciting 5 minutes we get there.
I always enjoy your work on Cats Illustrated, man. Your photography, all the shots you get, man. All the stuff you're doing there, man. Appreciate it. AG, check him out, thecatsballs.com. Jalen, 2-time author and coach as well. Appreciate everybody. This episode will be up at Believe.com. Sea of Blue, Jason Markman, the fellas put the episodes up on their site as well. Y'all get yourself a shirt, Cat Daddy shirt. Go to Believe.com/shop. We got some merch over there if y'all want to pick that up as well. And we hope to be back next week talking about Kentucky going 7-4, heading into Louisville after a win over those South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia. So for Aaron, Jalen, and Jeff, this is Vinny Hardy for another episode of Believe in Kentucky. And we'll see you.